New Mexico sex abuse.
For weeks now, they've flooded TV airwaves,
Now offering representation to victims of Catholic Church sexual abuse.
The New Mexico sex abuse lawyers have bought advertisements in newspapers. They have targeted your social media feed. But who are they? This group literally appeared from nowhere. Now they are everywhere. Well, we researched them and then we met with them. First, you have to meet Dan Fazy.
So I've represented clients from the East Coast to the West Coast and everywhere in between.
Dan is a lawyer from Washington State. Since 2007, part of his business model includes waiting for Catholic dioceses around the country to file bankruptcy. Then he jumps into the bankruptcy waters by collecting clients, filing claims against the church, and walking away with millions in settlement money. Dan told us he has collected $250 million in total from bankruptcy claims for his clients and himself. But because Dan is not licensed to practice law in all these other states, including New Mexico, he partners with local attorneys. Now it's time to meet Sam Fadul.
And I've been practicing both in Texas and in New Mexico for 37 years.
Sam founded this law firm on San Mateo in Albuquerque. After the Archdiocese of Santa Fe filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, Dan reached out to Sam, and together they created a new venture called New Mexico Sex Abuse Attorneys. Although Dan is not from New Mexico, and Sam admits he had never practiced this kind of law before.
You came in after the Archdiocese filed for bankruptcy.
Yes, sir, that's true.
And so prior to that, you hadn't worked with victims of clergy sex abuse before.
That's true.
Prior to the Archdiocese filing bankruptcy, had you ever sued the Archdiocese before?
Not this Archdiocese.
Had you sued any diocese in New Mexico before?
I sued, no, sir. No, not in New Mexico.
Had you ever represented a victim of clergy sex abuse?
No, sir.
At this point, have you deposed any priests that were on the list of credibly accused priests that the Archdiocese of Santa Fe put out?
That has not been opened up in the bankruptcy process to date.
It's been interesting to me that because you didn't have any prior experience in litigating sex abuse claims, that this venture is called New Mexico Sex Abuse Lawyers. How do you explain that?
Explain that because we're pursuing those claims here in the state of New Mexico, and we wanted, again, to reach people, and we have been successful in reaching people. Otherwise, their claims might not have been presented or pursued, and the church would have gotten away with it.
The New Mexico sex abuse lawyers are representing about 70 victims of clergy sex abuse. While Sam may be light on experience in clergy sex abuse cases, he has nearly 4 decades of experience in serious injury cases, representing hundreds of people hurt on the job or helping families who lost a loved one in explosions or fires.
The men and the women that I'm talking to, they're suffering hurt at a much greater degree than even some of these serious personal injury cases that I've dealt with.
And while Dan is a novice on the ins and outs of New Mexico, he has represented hundreds of victims of clergy sex abuse and understands how to navigate the complex and murky waters of bankruptcy court.
How did you choose to focus on the Archdiocese of Santa Fe?
We chose that when we saw that they were filing for bankruptcy, and we realized that in New Mexico this has been a very widespread problem.
The New Mexico sex abuse lawyers are now offering representation to...
This guy, by the way, we should tell you, is a paid actor, not an attorney. Their media blitz has sounded the alarms about the looming bankruptcy deadline. Clergy sex abuse claims against the Archdiocese of Santa Fe must be submitted by June 17th. After that, there's no guarantee that sex abuse survivors will get any kind of payout from the church.
And that deadline is fast approaching. And some of the worst calls that I've received in my career are, say, 2-3 weeks after a bar date. When someone calls me and I have to say to that person, look, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do for you at this point.
I think what kept this a secret and kept reform from occurring is that the church was not brought to task to pay real values.
Predators veiled in the cloth have created a public health crisis in New Mexico. Many survivors of priest abuse are still coping with those nightmares today. New Mexicans looking for an attorney to represent them should feel empowered to ask lawyers some tough questions. Chris Ramirez, 4 Investigates.